Welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig. And for those of you who do not know, which I don't know how because I seem to bring it up a lot, a couple of years ago, I was invited by some folks that would just come to my trivia nights to come out and play Survivor Calgary. And I thought, sure, why not? Let's go do this. Went and did it, and I ended up winning that season. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then I came back for All Stars. New season is out now of Survivor Calgary, and I'm here talking with the two people who are behind this. The reason why we're here now, season 5. This is Cole and Keegan. Hello, fellas. How you doing?
Oh, doing well.
Good. Quick correction. We're two of the three people
Two of the three.
that I think really have been important for these last 5 seasons of Survivor Calgary. You already talked to Tom.
Yes.
We're here to round out that trio for sure.
Yes. We had Tom on last season to talk about All Stars and tease. And this time, when Tom and I chatted, we were talking about Survivor All Stars. It hadn't all aired yet. Now, this one's Survivor Season 5. We've had 2 episodes out, and I don't know what's happening this time. I chose not to go out and be production to do it. But before we get into my season and Season 5, how did this come to be? What, and did you think it would be lasting this long?
So Keegan joined in as a player in season 2, but I was there from the beginning, and it fully started as, oh, we should play like a fun little rinky-dink Survivor game as a birthday party for me because I love Survivor so much. And Tom helped sort of start the planning process, and then as it got further and further along, it became more and more elaborate. And as it became more and more elaborate, we were like, maybe we should do this every year. And now we're in the planning for year 6. Year 5's episodes are coming out as we speak, as you said, and it's just sort of growing into very much its own thing.
Yeah. And Keegan, did you know that this was going to be what it has become?
No. So before season 1, I was living in San Francisco at the time. Before season 1, Tom messages me and is like, hey, I'm helping Cole run the Survivor thing. Can you just like give me some ideas for like some advantages we can throw out there? And I like send him like 40 advantages and I'm like, oh, this is fun. We'll write us some advantages. Apparently all of them got put into the forest, which is real exciting for Timothy to drag them out of his pockets in season 1 and be like, I have an advantage and another advantage. Which was super cool to see. And I thought that this was just like sort of, it's gonna be a birthday party thing. And then Cole starts editing it to be like this, I don't know, highly produced thing. And it sort of just continued to air. People just wanted to play again or play for the first time in my case. So,
Yes. Okay. So, you guys have competed, and you've also obviously been on productions. You alternated in the first few years there, like who was involved and
yep.
got to play. What do you enjoy about the playing aspect and the production aspect?
I mean, I think the playing aspect, every person who has ever watched Survivor for more than probably one episode, probably even for like 20 minutes, has been like, I wonder how I'd do out there.
Right.
Like the point of the show is almost to like sort of prompt this armchair quarterbacking where you're like, oh, I would have done this differently and I would have voted for this person in this scenario. So I think that's sort of that sort of dream come to life is the appeal of playing is being able to test yourself in this sort of game of wits and social strategy and physical competition and everything that's sort of involved in the regular like CBS Survivor game. The production is very interesting from like a game design point of view of like, hey, how do you make it so that we're sort of fostering the social bonds that will lead to some alliances that go sort of all the way through the season, or how do we sort of put tension into those social bonds so that they have to decide if they want to blindside their ally that they've been playing with for the entire game, and what sort of drama and story is created in those sorts of acts of, oh, hey, this is a rule we put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're sort of like lining up dominoes for like a social Rube Goldberg machine when you're setting up a season. Where you're like, okay, if I put this twist here and this twist here, oh, maybe some people will take like a Me or We idol in season 4, and that'll become a domino that like leads Craig to get blindsided out. The tiniest domino fall.
Yeah.
Being out there too is, I would say, like from a production standpoint, is a lot of fun too. When you're watching an episode of Survivor, you don't get all of the information that you might want. But let's say I'm in season 5 and I'm watching a conversation between Ben and Allie, and they're talking about Joel or they're talking about Kayla. I'm holding the camera on that conversation, but I can very easily be like, oh, no one's filming that conversation. I'm kind of interested to see what Joel and Kayla are talking about right now, and then walk over there and start filming that one. And you get sort of all of the aspects in real time as it's happening, which is quite cool.
Well, and I said to you at the premiere party, that I was like, I want to do production, but I feel like I would be too much of a, no, don't do that. Don't say that. Like I would be distracted. Like they'd be like saying,
He doesn't trust you.
yeah, I think me and blah, blah, blah are like, I think we're going to go all the way. And I go, "Ugh." I would not be good at that.
No.
It's really hard sometimes to. I think you referenced the Alan Cumming
Yes.
Traders interview,
Yeah.
where it was like, yeah, you have to like control your face and you have to like make sure that you're not giving away the game every time they say something. You have to like try and stay as stone faced as possible, or try and like smile at everything they're saying to like encourage them to like keep talking. Is sort of the way I try and go on, but
It's gotten very challenging. Like I remember All Stars was an emotional season.
Yeah.
There was a lot of crying in that season. There was a lot of crying at the urn in that season, and it was very hard. And I failed a lot at not, feeling for those people as they're voting out their best friend or whatever. And so you'll come, like the next person will come to the urn, and your eyes are already red. Like I need to wear sunglasses at the urn every season now.
So I wanted to talk about, Tom and I chatted about this, and for the people who are just tuning in for this very first time of Survivor Calgary this new season, what people may not realize is it is one weekend. It is jam-packed. You get these breaks to, go to the bathroom, have lunch and everything, but you're just constantly going. And so you have a little bit less time to really have all the conversations you need and be able to trust people. I know that was one of my things, where if 4 of us said, okay, we're gonna vote out this person, now we're gonna go off and chat with these people and then see. And if somebody comes back to me and says they were saying that we're gonna vote out John Doe, and I'm like, did we just say that to throw you off the scent, or is that what's really happening? So talk to me about that aspect and what just that speed up of time really does for players in their game.
yeah, you mentioned the fact that there are breaks. I don't think many players are fully taking a break from the game in those instances, even if they're not talking about the game. I think it's happening so quickly and it's so front of mind at all times out there that there's really no breaks for the entire time that you're playing the game, at least in my mind, as someone who gets very into it.
Yeah.
And it does very much like fully feel like this is a weekend where I am fully checked out of everything else other than what is happening directly now in this moment, which can make it feel quite intense, but also make it feel very rewarding and like a sort of, it is escapist in that sort of way where you're very much focused on this sort of small stakes setting.
Yeah.
That feels very high stakes, but you're not so locked into the rest of the goings on in the world, and it feels sort of like a break in that way.
Sort of touching on like the time management aspect of it, especially when we're getting into like merge episodes or something, and it's something we've been cognizant of as production, is we sometimes let more time happen for like these swap or these merge episodes, so people have some amount more time to actually talk with each other before these very important notes, when some of the talking with each other is just getting to know people. One of the things I tell people who are going on the season is that time management of your conversations is extremely important. And the big thing to avoid there is like group conversations.
Yes.
Like 6 people group conversations are practically useless.
It's so useless.
You like most of what's like actually productive in these things is like 2-person groups, 3-person groups, or a group that you have like an already established plan with from these duo or these trio conversations. We've even seen like the time management weaponized in certain seasons, particularly in season 2. Moira was a very effective player in season 2 at not letting people organize counter movement against her alliance, where she would just sort of insert herself into conversations so that people could not talk about going for Moira or going for Robin or all of these things because she was there.
Right.
Weaponized awkwardness. Weaponized awkwardness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why reality shows are so popular, because it's such a, it's real, it's really happening, but it's all about social dynamics. That's such a huge part of it. Like, yes, we're doing these challenges, we're out there, the all-star season, it was like 35 degrees, swelterade, but that wasn't my biggest concern. It was these social dynamics. And I mean, I know how to talk to people and interact, but not everybody does, or you don't know how everybody reacts together. Keegan, is that one of your favorite aspects of Survivor? Is the, like, that social dynamic, that's what comes into play?
Yeah, like, to me, that is like, we talk about, that's why we like reality shows. I feel like Survivor is like that taken to its like sharpest point, maybe in like Big Brother.
Yeah.
Where the only thing that matters for winning the game, other than like some amount of challenge performance, which you can't really rely on to win the game oftentimes, is how do I get along with these people? And some amount of strategy off of that, but it's a common saying that any type, like, your social connections are the engine to get the rest of your car of your game going.
Right.
Nothing works if you don't connect with people.
Yeah. Cole, so you've huge Survivor fan. You've competed twice in Survivor Calgary. Are you surprised often with how well some players do in their social games, knowing people, knowing how they go, or can you usually predict who's going to do fairly well with their social game?
I mean, I think it's tricky because different people connect to different people. And I might think someone coming into the game is probably an excellent social player because they just happen to connect well with me. And then we put them on to a tribe, to a group of people, and they don't necessarily connect with that group of people, and they're voted out early. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think that would happen. And I think that's what's sort of appealing to these sorts of games, is you can't really predict what's going to happen. Beyond just the game mechanics sort of throwing everything for a twist, it's tricky to see and to predict the outcomes of, oh, clearly this person's going to get along with everyone, so they're going to win the season.
Right.
With exception of you, obviously, Craig. We knew that you'd have a great social game right off the bat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We can cut it here now. We're done. I just was waiting for a compliment.
Like, to give you an idea, production would do like fantasy, like production does like fantasy brackets where they pick 3 players who they think is going to do well during the season and see how it ends up in the end. Honestly, I think if you had production pick 3 random players every time, the average score would be about the same. Where you'll like lock in and be like, oh, this player had like really good interviews and they seem like they have a really good handle of Survivor and they know Survivor. And then they get in there and they just don't do anything of what you expected because they just approach the game differently. Sometimes people are coming back and you're like, they didn't, like, Taylor was not a person who I was like super like, oh, Taylor is going to kill it on season 4.
Yeah.
And then he was incredible.
Yeah.
And so people can surprise you in either way. And it's sort of the fun of the game is seeing how these things go forward.
Yeah, because it's a fun thing for you, because obviously as production you choose which tribes, you mix them up, you go, okay, this is gonna be, I think this would be good dynamics, trying to make it fair. You're not just being like, all right, we really want this team to win, so we're gonna put all the athletes on this one and we're gonna give them nothing but physical challenges at the beginning. And then you have these plans for, okay, when this gets introduced or when this swap happens, this dynamic will be interesting. But again, you don't know what's going to happen. People are unpredictable.
And when we propose twists and stuff, this was hard in season 4 because a lot of the people who are super aware of Survivor were playing season 4. But for season 5 and other seasons, like what we're doing for season 6 right now, we'll poll people who are, like, we know played the game well.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, how would you work around this twist if you were to see it? And we get some ideas, and then we bring it out this season, and people just
Yeah.
All of that's thrown out the window, and there's like 17 different new strategies to associate with it because A, they have a way more time to think about it than just, hey, well, how would you handle this? And B, they're actually out there working with it.
Yeah.
And I do think that sort of pressure cooker aspect of the time management, where you have such a short amount of time to figure stuff out, has some sort of effect on that too, where you get people making decisions that maybe if they had a little bit more time to think through, they wouldn't make.
Yeah.
For better or worse. I don't know if Sid, if she had all the time in the world to think about the Me Are We Idol, if she would have gone for that, but it ended up being like a great move for her, right?
Right.
And maybe theoretically, if I had had more time to think about who took the Me Are We Idol, I wouldn't have automatically assumed it was you and immediately discounted Sid. Like there very much is that sort of
I would
pressure
have,
cooker environment.
even watching it, like when I found out that Sid did it, like I would have blamed me still. I knew I didn't take it, but there was a thought of me that was like, well, it can't be Sid, so maybe it is me.
One of these two people, so it has to be Craig. Because Sid in her last season, like before All Stars came out, to give listeners some context, would hide in the woods so that she wouldn't have to lie to people.
Yeah.
Like minutes before Tribal Council, she would run off into the woods and just hide, and then eventually join the rest of the people waiting to vote to make sure that she would not have to lie to the person who she was voting out. And then made this decision in All Stars where she was basically committing to lying for the remainder of the game.
Right. And it worked. Well, mostly worked out. It worked out better than it did for me. But
She was a Sudoku puzzle away from winning. I think it worked out.
Yeah.
But there's like an interesting side effect with the time management too.
Yeah.
Where you'll see like there's like 30 minutes to make a decision between a challenge ending and tribal council. But then at the end of day 1 to the beginning of day 2, suddenly you have hours overnight in your tent thinking, stewing about all these relationships. You're like, hold on a second, that guy's a threat. And you'll very commonly see people's read of the game substantially change
yeah.
after they go to bed and wake up the next morning.
Yeah, I definitely was like rethinking some things, and I mean that's you play the what ifs all the time. Like I even said when the time I got voted out, I went and it was so stressful, and I was like I almost like I need a shot. Like I was like I should just do shot in the dark because I also didn't think I was going to get voted out, and I also thought I was like safe that I wouldn't actually need.
Your vote wasn't needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? And I was so close to taking a shot in the dark, and that would have been the craziest twist because I don't know what would have happened then. Shit would have happened, but yeah, it's.
I'm glad you didn't. Editing that out would have been impossible because no one would have been able to. Oh yeah, Craig just took a shot because he wanted a shot. I guess we could have actually made that.
We could have made that believable. Craig just walks up to the urn and says, "I want a shot," and then we show 17 different idols getting played because Sid had 2 and Taylor had 1, and
Yeah, there's just everything was happening. Okay, so before we start talk about this new season of the previous 4 seasons, do either of you have a favorite moment or a favorite challenge that really sticks out for you that if you could just showcase to to people to be like, I don't know if this show's for me, just be like, watch this.
Well, I actually recently showed the show to my partner, who is like loosely familiar with Survivor, but hasn't watched it in years. Basically, when I brought it up, they were like, "What do you mean you play a game of Survivor in the woods every year?" And so I showed it to them with the express purpose of being like, "Okay, hey, watch this," because I wanted to see their reaction to Your Blind Side.
Yeah,
where it was, "Hey, watch these 5 people," and I played a very loose part in it. My part was basically act as scared as possible while I was basically as scared as possible.
Yeah.
But this very brilliant move that was put together very, very quickly of how do we take out one of the biggest hearts in this game without anyone else knowing. And it was really it was the exact reaction I wanted. They were shocked, they were surprised, and that sort of shock, that sort of surprise that like, oh, this is how these social dynamics can evolve and how quickly things can come together and the strategy involved and the seeds that needed to be planted and everything like that can come together to create something really compelling. That, unfortunately, Your Blind Side is probably my answer.
I like The Blind Side. I feel honored that that's how I had to be voted out. And even as you guys were all leaving the viewing party at Bourne the other day, like one of the last people in there was Trent, was just like, "You are just an all-star to this game," and like you left with the biggest blind side because that was the only way. I was like, "Oh, I feel like I take it as a compliment."
To win one of the most dominant games and get voted out in one of the most flashy ways is a pretty great legacy to
Thank
leave
you.
behind.
Thank you.
For sure.
It's certainly better than going out one step before the merge and then at the merge of near you in it. But, I think my favorite moment, and I will see how it comes out in the edit because we still haven't gotten there in the show, but is honestly in season 5.
Oh,
There is a particular tribal council, this one, that I think is going to be really, really fun to see play out in person. Or on the edit after seeing it in person.
yeah.
Favorite challenge, honestly, is probably just is the one in All Stars where it's Sean versus Cam holding the bucket over their head.
Oh, yeah.
And Cam is just screaming in pain, and Sean has the most stoic poker face in the world, and somehow Cam like edges it out, but like while screaming, just because Sean's poker face was just that. It was a poker face trying to get Cam out. It was a really cool, like, oh shit, wait, what just happened? In terms of challenges, I think that was my favorite.
Yeah. Cole, do you have a favorite?
Favorite challenge? I mean, that one is a classic. I'm always a fan of, and I push to put it in every season. I cannot neither confirm nor deny whether it's in this next season coming up, but touchy subjects, which is the one where you have to like answer the questionnaire and then people have to guess the most common answer on the questionnaire. I think it plays into the main game super well because it kind of throws those social dynamics up in the air a little bit and reveals a little bit about what people are thinking. But if the super savvy players can sort of hide what they're thinking and maybe play not to win the challenge, but to advance their social game further. And I think it's really sort of interesting flip on what your typical immunity challenge is, which is do this thing, win immunity, you're safe.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than do this thing, maybe don't do this thing as well as you could so that you are safe in other ways, which I think is super interesting.
From like a game design perspective, touchy subjects is probably my favorite because we can be sure that big alliances will get kind of nervous about each other after touchy subjects, which is like one of the biggest things that we are always thinking about when doing game design is how do we avoid a big alliance just steamrolling the entire game?
Yeah. And
And sometimes they do anyway.
Yeah, but the touchy subject. People go watch the touchy subject from the All Star, and there's people. I didn't even clue into it at first, but it was like, oh wait, there is an answer there that I should have been more concerned about.
And frequently that's what happens is people just write off the answers as, oh, that's just something weird that people said. But it really does sort of give you a peek into what's really going on behind the scenes that you don't see when you're out there. You only see when you're watching on television.
Yeah.
And who are the last people left in the game near the end of touchy subjects? Not necessarily the winner, but the last 3 or 4 are usually the people in power in the game.
Yeah. Well, and I think in season 3, my name wasn't really brought up for anything too spicy. It was just because I was just at that point I was just very much still just having fun. People weren't viewing me as a threat, and then All Stars, and so that's where the difference is. If you watch the 2 touchy subjects, you're like, oh, this is one's good for Craig, what is bad for Craig. So let's talk about this new season. When this episode's coming out, we've already had 2 episodes out. I've got to watch the first 2 episodes. We've got 15 players, and we've got a Wild Wild West theme. Keegan, why did we decide Wild Wild West?
Honestly, someone brought up the idea. I forget who brought up the idea of doing a Wild Wild West theme. And then we started just thinking about all of the ways that we could make the game play into the theme. We have the bounty board in season 4 that fits into the theme perfectly. The shot in the dark is now a shot of a gun. Yeah. There's like so many challenges that we can build off of the theme. You'll like in season 1, people are building the bounty board. In episode 2, which I think people will see, there's like the inflatable horses that people need to keep in between their legs, which I think they can see in the preview. And like we try and like use that throughout, and it made it really easy to make like a cohesive thing going throughout the season, rather than like in the past we've done like brains versus brawn versus belligerents or all stars, and that kind of leans into just like sort of the normal Survivor stuff,
Right.
and you can kind of sort of pick from a grab bag of the normal Survivor stuff, and maybe throw in some stuff that you've come up with, like the bounty board in season 4. But it makes it easier to sort of go top down instead of bottom up with a lot of the like game design you're doing when you have a solid theme.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
Wild West was good for Calgary, and it's easy to do on the outside, like in the outdoors.
Yeah.
filmed it.
Other themes,
We filmed it during Stampede weekend.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And so Cole, tell us about our 3 tribes this year.
Yes, we have good, bad, and ugly. And we had this idea immediately of, okay, we could do the good, bad, and the ugly tribe. And we sort of laughed it off at first because that would require assigning a tribe to be ugly and a tribe to be bad. And we didn't really feel like doing that to people that are largely our friends in the past. But we had the idea of like, okay, the first place tribe gets to pick their name first. And then the second place tribe gets to pick their name second. And then the last place tribe is stuck with whatever they got, knowing that the last place tribe would probably get the good tribe because people would think it's funny if they won and they're bad or they won and they're ugly. And obviously that's exactly what happened in this season. It ended up working out pretty well. And I'm quite happy with how the tribes were divided this year. You talked a little bit about like how we set up tribes for social dynamics, and that's usually not our primary concern. Our primary concern is usually, hey, we need to make sure that these people who know each other really, really well are on separate tribes.
Right.
And we need to make sure that they're as balanced as possible for challenges. Which can be tricky to marry those two things together because this person is on one tribe, the other person has to be on this other tribe with this other person, and so they're just going to naturally be better challenges. Or this season we have 3 returnees who have played the game before. We naturally wanted to make sure that there was one returnee on each of these 3 tribes. And that sort of can affect how we balance these tribes out a little bit, where, oh, this returnee is maybe just slightly better at challenges than these other 2, and then we have to sort of balance accordingly.
It's also pretty hard to predict if somebody is going to be good or bad at a particular challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could be bad at a word search and not know how to spell things. So
They could be great at the word search and then just have no idea how to spell the word triumphant.
Yeah.
For instance.
And both of those would fall under the category of like word game. Right? So how would you rate Craig on a word game challenge level? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 0?
speed, yes. Efficiency,
There's a reason that you say spelling doesn't count in trivia.
exactly.
Yeah.
So also a dynamic that's really fun. We kind of talked about it as you both have been production and players and have gone back and forth. Not only do we have 3 returning players, but we have people who are playing the first time who have been part of production for almost the entire run, or at least a couple of them, even just once before. What do you feel like they're going to bring to the table as players this time?
Before the season, because obviously Cole and I know what happens, right?
Yeah.
Before the season, we were very interested to see how experience in production would transition over to a newbie season.
Right.
We had some idea that it was probably an advantage based off of how people in All Stars talked about how their experience in production helped out in All Stars. But we were very interested to see how Ali and Chelsea and was there anyone else who did production?
I mean, it was done production before.
Yeah.
Aaron's done production before. Saphir's done production before.
Yeah.
Like some of these players are returning players, but they've all been behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of, okay, how is that going to help them? And if you are production just for All Stars, are you going to hit the ground too quick?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be like, oh, we're playing All Stars, we got to name names immediately, we got to make big alliances quickly? And so there was that anticipation as well. I can honestly say after episode 1, I'm pretty impressed with the people who were production turned player.
I think so, yeah.
Whether that continues is another matter entirely, but
They were pretty consistently the most picked in our, like the Keegan talked about the little fantasy thing earlier. They were pretty consistently the most picked from the people who were production that year for who would go far in the game this year. And I think another interesting thing that's sort of, as you talk about like the evolution of, production to player, newbie season, everything like this, is that season 5, with the exception of this Edmonton crew that kind of knows each other and some of the production links, is, and this is sort of a running theme as the seasons have gone on, is as the seasons go further and further, fewer of the players know each other before they come into the game,
Right.
which I think has a big impact on how the game is played as well, because you don't have these bonds that you trust necessarily more than someone who you met in the game who you've been with the entire time. Sort of, actually, frequently I find when you're playing these games, the people who you started the game with, you actually end up trusting some of those people more than someone who you've known for 3 or 4 years beforehand who was on the other tribe from you at the beginning of the game.
Right. No, and I mean, I didn't really know. I knew some of you because you come to my trivia nights. I didn't really know any of you, so I was going in blind, and I think that helped because I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to wear my trivia daddy hat, drink beer, and say stupid things.
And it works.
It works. It works. So, and now we have a bunch of new players who have maybe have watched the series, but they haven't been in production. They haven't played before. What are your thoughts on all of them?
Well, to start, we have like one of the things we did for a lot of the players is if they were asking like, "Hey, I don't know really what I'm getting into here. Can I get some help?" Cole and I had like mostly Cole had like a presentation that he would give some of the players on like, here is how as Survivor has evolved over the years.
Yes.
Here is sort of the sort of things you can think about and sort of the do's and don'ts that you want to be talking about. And some of those things are like, oh, you want to be aware of like alliances within alliances and all these sorts of things. And so people weren't coming out like in seasons 1 and 2, some people were coming out and they had really no idea what they were getting into. We've sort of done a better job of setting expectations. Like, this is a game about lying.
Yeah.
You will be lied to. You will probably lie to people.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're setting that expectation there. In terms of how the newbies have done this season, I've been really happy. Whether they were production before or just full newbie on the cast, a lot of them, like some of the players who I am most impressed by coming out of this season are people who had no experience with Survivor Calgary before, other than maybe watching All Stars.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Cole, what has the Survivor community been like for its Survivor Calgary? Have they been accepting of it? Like, it seems to get a lot of views.
We get a decent amount of views for sure. There is sort of this like grander community surrounding what are called live reality games, which Survivor Calgary would very much fall under, that I was very much unaware of before Survivor Calgary became a thing.
Yeah.
Where, unsurprisingly, because Survivor, the game, only casts 30 to 40 people every year, a lot of people want to play the game that do not have the chance to play the game. So you see sort of these fan games pop up all over the place. And there is very much this community online that sort of aims to connect these different communities to each other. And I think Survivor Calgary fits in this weird sort of extra zone where the live reality game community is aware of us, but we're not sort of directly in it, where a lot of these live reality games have players that play in like 8 or 9 of these a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a full-time hobby for people, which I think is very, very cool. My full-time hobby is editing Survivor Calgary. But the Survivor community in general is very excited at watching more Survivor, because fundamentally what's attractive about watching Survivor is seeing how real people react to this very interesting game, and not necessarily all of the extra stuff that CBS throws into the show. It's more about, hey, this is a human talking to another human and playing this very sort of intense game based on these social dynamics. So I personally think that there have been episodes of Survivor Calgary that I would rate higher than many episodes of CBS Survivor in terms of just, hey, this was entertaining all the way through. This was engaging to watch.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing about other live reality games as well. There is an interesting element of live reality games where, because most of these shots are a single camera taking it instead of both shoulder over the shoulder, and because you just generally have less experienced editors, all these things, the editing team can play less tricks
Right.
than CBS Survivor.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get a confessional from 7 episodes later being inserted into episode 3 to misrepresent what's actually going on. And so there's some element where you might actually get more truth of what actually happened during a game of a live reality game than on Survivor CBS or like a show like The Traders, especially.
Yeah.
Which has a lot of things where you hear news about like, oh yeah, that was just a lie that they said in the camera because production asked them to.
Yeah. I know. I even found out, I didn't realize this, that they actually they film Alan tapping everybody on the shoulder. And then they go, okay, well, now we're going to do it for real. But they had to get that footage. And I'm like, that just seems weird. And like, that's where you're like, oh, that becomes fake.
Like the revelation that tribal councils on CBS Survivor last at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Where they're answering, they just really cherry pick like 6 or 7 minutes. And we're on the time constraint where, okay, we have to get this done in 15 minutes. We got to get in, get out. And so you kind of see everything that happens, which is interesting. In terms of how Survivor has responded to the LRG community, it's sort of a legal gray area for us to be using the Survivor name, where I think they very much see it as like free advertising.
Yeah.
Where I know people who have started watching Survivor because they enjoyed watching Survivor Calgary. But in general, explicitly in the law, probably not the most legal thing, and we're not benefiting from it at all. Honestly.
It's also relevant that I don't think a single live reality game is making any money.
No, and it's also relevant that like Survivor has cast players who have played or helped run these things before too. So I think they're very much aware that it is a thing, but not talking about it so that it can exist in its own little ecosphere.
Okay, so this season, like I said, we've had a couple of episodes there. Were we surprised by Kayla and Baron being our first 2 people out? Because I was shocked.
It was so after watching the tribal council and seeing the very beginning, I was not shocked when Kayla was in that first 5 minutes, Kayla hit the ground not so good, honestly, with like how she was approaching some of these conversations of like proposing like a random vote and things like that, in my opinion. Obviously she picked it up after that first 5 minutes, but she just couldn't catch up after it.
Yeah.
And then Baron, I was very surprised by. Baron was a person who I thought was Baron has played a lot of these like online games where you're supposed to sort of hide a lot of these things. I was very surprised with how open Baron was about like being a strategist.
Yeah.
Where he was like, oh yes, he told the cameras about how he tried to give Saphir the poison pill silver coin, but he also told his entire tribe to try to get Saphir this thing, including people who eventually told Saphir.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is coming up by episode 2's release, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
2 will be out by okay. I'm making sure so I'm not spoiling.
Yeah, we're not spoiling that.
And so it, like both people being out first honestly really did surprise me. Kayla was a person who, after the end of season 3, I was really, really excited to see play again.
Yeah.
Because she had that excellent conversation with Sid that basically turned the game around for what ended up going down in the end.
Yeah. Like
basically shut down that Braun alliance for good.
I was really excited to see Kayla play. Transparently, she was my first pick on the fantasy board going into the season. Because like Keegan said, I was really impressed by her play after she came back from the edge, and I thought she'd sort of keep that momentum going. I think she very much could have. I think she had some nerves going in with the pressure of, oh, this is a return. And I also think coming in as a returnee, having that sort of inflated profile compared to 4 newbies that you're coming into the game with, when you have especially this accelerated timeline of, oh, we lost the first challenge, who's going to go home? It can very easily fall on the one person who has like that differentiating factor of, oh, I played this game before. Especially when that person has won the way back from the edge, and maybe they feel less guilty about voting that person out because they're just like, oh, she'll win back in.
Yeah.
In terms of Baron, I think I was very much of the opinion that Baron will be out in these first 3 or 4 votes, or he's in it for the long haul and will probably be a player at the very end of the game to win the whole thing. Where I think he's someone who can come across very polarizing, where either you get his sense of humor and you love him, or you're just sort of confused and left wondering, hey, why is this person telling me this right now? But yeah, I think I was surprised with the way that specific vote went down, especially after the Allura bounty got pulled. I thought maybe Baron would push maybe a little bit more Alluра's name,
Yeah.
but he was sort of locked in on this idea of I need to separate myself from this Edmonton crew. I need to vote out Jared.
Which I think was a right strategy, but it just didn't work out. I understand where he was coming from there, but I totally agree with you. I thought Baron was it was one or two ways, and I would have kept him in because I would have been like, this guy is a strong personality. People are going to keep focus on him, and I can just be here. So I was very surprised, but again, it's tough, and you only have, at the beginning of this tribe, again, there's only 5 people at the beginning, so you only have a very few 4 people to choose from.
I think Baron's ultimate fate came down to his transparent self-interest.
Yeah.
He was so transparently interested only in his own gain versus people saying that they were loyal to X person or Y person, that you can't be like, people were a little bit less sure taking that person into like a swap or a murder.
Right. Okay, so
If Baron had pulled that bounty and been like, hey, Charla, Jared, I know Saphir and Allura are tight. We can break up that duo and we get an advantage for the 3 of us to share, and maybe present that in more of like an altruistic way of like, hey, let's do this thing together. Obviously, it can be very transparent, but even just that initial like, hey, let's do this thing together, especially while you're like forming those bonds early, is enough to push through those first few votes.
right. Okay, so we've only had 2 episodes out. We've got so many players still in this game, twists and turns. Obviously, we're not going to spoil anything, but I want each of you to tell me, for those listening who haven't watched yet or going, yeah, I should definitely watch it, what's your pitch? Let's start with you, Keegan. What's your pitch for people for this season of Survivor Calgary?
I'm going to have to think about this for a second because I think so. No, haven't watched Survivor Calgary at all.
Yeah, I haven't watched it all.
Come to watch an extremely chaotic and fluid game of social strategy with a undercurrent of the humor and levity of it all as it goes on.
That's a good pitch. You've sold me. Cole, what about you?
Yeah, I think we play with the Western theme in a very fun, sort of tongue-in-cheek way. I think this is by far our most dynamic cast of players in terms of how they're migrating from alliances to people, and sort of, as Keegan said, the chaotic nature of it all. I think it's a really fun season to follow. Like if you follow one person's path through the entire game, it will make no sense. You have to sort of see it all sort of come together to really understand the ways the season sort of turns and goes. And I think it makes for a really entertaining sort of episode to episode. And I think we get a really satisfying winner at the end of it too.
Ooh, I like that. And
now, Craig, you're unspoiled. I have a question for you.
okay, yes.
Do you have any predictions for the season after seeing the first 2 episodes?
Okay, I've been thinking about that. I literally have been thinking about this. And Grayson, who was working at Born that night, and that was her first time watching, she's like, oh, I can't wait to watch more. We were discussing and trying to figure it out. And okay, and obviously you guys aren't going to tell me anything. Even if I say like, oh, I'll edit it out. No, you won't tell me anything because I also don't want to know. But I do think Allie and Chelsea, I'm very impressed with them. We've mentioned them that they were previous production. I'm very impressed with them. Allie is playing such a kind of level-headed. The way she was discussing with her tribe that first episode, it was just very, and she was not calling people out on their bullshit, but she was making sure discussions were happening, but not in a way that seems like a shit disturber. And I think I feel Chelsea's going to have a fun like Craig and also Cam game where it's like very fun, but she's like, and everyone's gonna be like having fun, but she's gonna be making some moves. So those are people that I'm really watching out for, and I think they're gonna go far. I don't know, but I'm super impressed with their gameplay so far.
And say it is very easy to get that perception from the first two episodes. I think their first two episodes are extremely good.
Yeah.
I think they were both very popular picks for Production's fantasy pool as well. I think they were among our most popular. I will say, and I hope this doesn't give anything too crazy away, I do think that through each of their respective times in the season, I think they have a very interesting path to where they end up.
See, I don't know what that means. It could mean they're gone after the next episode, or they make it all the way to the end. But that's what's so good. And
I love giving out fake spoilers where to a fun little aside. While planning season 2,
yeah,
I got very drunk with Cam, who was a player in season 2, and I was production, and gave him a whole bunch of fake spoilers so that when he came into the weekend, he would think all of these things were true, and Drunk Cole told them in his weakness. And he comes into the season and none of it's true.
that's amazing.
It's a really fun sort of way to fuck around a little bit. But
yeah, it's a good way to do it. And I'm so excited to watch this season. We've still got so many episodes to go. And I don't know where it's gonna go, but I'm gonna say right now we've recording this in March here. I've seen the first two episodes, and I'm just saying Ali or Chelsea's gonna go far. Before the game, I thought Kayla was gonna go far.
me too.
We all did. Oh, but that's the way it goes. You never know, and there's still so much more twists. I'm excited to see all the twists. You guys always bring stuff in. And I will say, as someone who hasn't watched Survivor since Survivor, like, I think the first All-Stars. Yeah, the first All-Stars is when I last watched it, and I just haven't
We're
watched
40 seasons separated.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been fun to get into Survivor Calgary and really witness, and I think there's something to be said about knowing that you can't, like you said, you can't really edit to make it more fun by taking something from episode 7 and bringing it into 3, and it's just a little bit more real. So I absolutely love it, and I thank you both for letting me play some sort of role in Survivor Calgary history.
Absolutely. If you will indulge me, Craig, I just have a pitch to everyone listening.
Okay.
Survivor Calgary. I would not be nearly as close with Craig if it weren't for Survivor Calgary, and it's a friendship that I deeply value. Survivor Calgary has also had a very sort of strengthening effect on many of the relationships of the players that play. It's a really great group of people, a really great community that's formed around it. We've had multiple relationships, long-term relationships that have come out of it through people that have met through the game. A lot of lifelong friendships made through it. I know I've made some lifelong friendships that I'll cherish forever. And it's a really fun, if stressful time. It's very much like type 2 rewarding fun, where it's stressful at the time, but you get a lot out of it thinking back and looking back on it. And I would encourage everyone to, if they're interested, check it out first maybe, and then maybe apply if it's something that they are interested in potentially trying out this summer.
Yeah, and you can find the application link on the Survivor Calgary Instagram and in the comments of the YouTube episodes.
Yeah, and it's
and on YouTube it's just Survivor Calgary.
It's just Survivor Calgary. It's so much fun. I am so thankful to like have met you and become friends with you all. And every time I see any of you at my events or Survivor things, it just brings me so much joy because it's so much fun. And it is just one of those things like you understand when you watch something like The Traitors. And they bring in the people from Big Brother and Survivor, and it's this community. They all know each other, and it's like they're people I haven't competed with, but I know, and we get each other now. So it's such a fun thing.
It's amazing how like this 3-day thing once a year is like such a bond strengthener between the people who come out.
So as we start to wrap up, I always like to ask my guests, what's awesome? So each of you tell me something that's awesome. It can be about the show. It can be about life. It could be food. It could be whatever you want. Whoever would like to go first. What's awesome?
I'm going to let you go ahead first, Cole.
I think the new Japanese breakfast album is awesome. I'm very partial to it. I think it's great.
Oh.
I think honestly, the like happiest thing recently has been going to the premiere and seeing all of the people. We raised $840 for Skipping Stone. And like I met up with a bunch of the people who came down from Edmonton ahead of time, and then we had like sort of like a little after party out. I had a really good time with people, and I was really really excited about that.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's so much fun. I love the viewing parties. I'm so thankful that I could get Born involved with it because obviously I love Born, and having the viewing parties with the finales and now the premiere. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, okay. Thank you both so much, Cole and Keegan, for not only being my guests today on the show, but for Survivor Calgary, being a part of this with Tom as well. We absolutely adore my host's brother. He's fantastic. So Survivor Calgary, tell us how people can watch it.
It's just Survivor Calgary on YouTube. If you search it in YouTube, you'll probably see one of the episodes. If you click on the channel link, you'll see the most recent. And then on Instagram, it's also at Survivor Calgary. There's no spaces or anything in these. And on that Instagram, you'll see a bunch of links to like the new episodes. You'll see some like extra content of like meet player shorts.
Yeah.
If you want to have like some of the early interviews that we did before the game started. And there's also an application link there if people are interested in playing season 6.
And new episodes drop every Monday at 6.
Every Monday, I believe it's 5:30. Don't quote me on that. It shows it when it's going to premiere, so it'll be hard to miss. And then we'll have our recap podcast after and everything like that. But
yeah, to note, yeah.
Oh, Keegan, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, to note is the recap podcast is not on the main Survivor Calgary channel. It is on the Live Reality Games YouTube channel, which is just Live Reality Games with spaces.
So who's hosting this year's recap?
It's me. It's season 4 All Stars winner Taylor.
Boo.
And it's you voted for him to win.
I know.
And it's season 2 fan favorite idol hunter Krish.
Nice, yeah.
And it's fun because Taylor and Krish are completely unspoiled as well, and so we get their real feedback, their real thoughts on what's going to happen next without necessarily 2020 hindsight.
That's awesome. I've actually I've got it. I haven't listened to the first one because I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to listen to on my way to trivia tonight. Because I'm excited to hear their thoughts on it. Taylor and I haven't chatted about it yet, so I need to listen to it and then call him out on it. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. Check out Survivor Calgary, YouTube, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Follow me, Passing Time with Craig, PGW Craig, for all the fun ways to pass time. And lots of fun stuff coming up and some Survivor stuff, always interested. Thank you both so much for being here today, Cole and Keegan. And we'll chat soon. Bye.